Hello, welcome back to Healing Momma Podcast. I am Belle, aka Healing Momma. Stop smiling, you're making me nervous.
You're crazy.
We are coming to you with episode 12, and this episode is Inner Child Healing, the perspective of someone else. All right, so we will go ahead and kick it off. I have my husband here with me today who has started his journey to inner child healing. And I know back in, I think, February when we did our Valentine's Day episode, you were, saying like, me and you were on different journeys. You were like on a journey for money. I was on a journey for healing. And now we're kind of like at a middle point and kind of meshed
Mm.
with the inner child healing together a few months later. So I will let you go ahead and say your quote since you're the guest, and then I will follow up after you.
Okay. So just the way that Valerie said, this is her hubby Andres, and because I'm married to my wife, that technically makes me Healing Papa. So for you guys who want to refer to me as Healing Papa, you're more than welcome to. So the quote that I have chosen for today is okay, so the quote I chose was, "Let us listen to the needs of our inner child that is being tamed and imprisoned by the rules of a grown-up world." And so the reason that I chose that quote is because the way that I see it is, even though it says by the rules of a grown-up world, for myself, it's like starting from the very beginning. So when you're born and you're just a baby, when you're just a baby, you haven't reached the grown-up stage yet. So as a baby, you haven't like made any kind of money, you haven't gained any kind of experience, or you don't really have anything to offer the world. All you are is just a baby. And even just as a baby, when you see that baby doesn't have to do anything and it's already enough. It's already worthy just because it exists, just because it's being. The way that it says that our needs of the inner child are being tamed and imprisoned by the rules of the grown-up world, just basically to me it means that so as we start getting older, one example would be maybe like when I was in sixth grade and I knew somebody who was making CDs on the side for money. They told me that for them to be able to make a CD for myself, I would have to write down a list of songs and give it to him, and then he would make the CD for me. And so back then, some of the songs that I was into were more like R&B, like girly songs. And so when I made that list, my idea was like, okay, like I'll write down the list of songs, and then I'll just tell him that that those songs, if he does ask, are for my sister. And so I gave him the list of songs. He looked them over and he didn't say anything. So I thought, okay, I was in the clear. And a couple days later, I think I asked him something about the CD, or I was kind of making like playing around with him. And then he came back and then he told me, he said something along the lines of, okay, you and your like girly songs or something like that. And I told him, I was like, well, those songs are for my sister, like they're not for me. And he was like, yeah, right. And so I had already been like being bullied. That was the first year that I had been being bullied, was in sixth grade. So when he was like kind of smirking and laughing and saying, yeah, right, in me that changed something where I learned like, okay, I'm already being rejected by people who aren't my friends, and now somebody who is my friend, he's seen a side of me which is that I don't like only like basically like manly music, but that there is also some softer songs that I like, and he's laughing at it, and I don't want to be rejected by him. So I'm gonna go ahead and never expose that part of myself again. And so ever since then, I've never been able to show that side of me where it's always like, okay, like I'm only gonna like music that's acceptable to other guys because that's the only thing that's going to keep me from being rejected by them or being looked at different. And so that was a side of me like as a kid growing up. That was one instance where growing up changed me. And now the needs of my inner child, they're not going to be met because now I don't choose which songs that I like. It just happens instinctively, and now I can't even express the songs that I like because I'm going to be scared of the judgment or the opinions of other people. But that's just like one instance. I mean, I'm pretty sure there's way more. I mean, there is way more than that, but that's one instance that really comes out that really relates to the quote that I chose for today.
That's good. That's good. Thank you
Hmm.
for sharing. All right. And so we'll get into mine. So mine is they said, hurt people hurt people. I answered, not all hurt people hurt people. Some spend their lives making sure no one else feels what they did. Some break cycles. Some build safe spaces. Some turn pain into purpose. Hurt people don't just hurt people, hurt people heal people too.
Yeah.
So I really like that one because I have an episode, I think in season one, where I did an episode on hurt people because that was really how I was feeling in the moment. And so when I read this quote, I loved it because I was like, hurt people, but heal people, heal people. Like,
Hmm.
I genuinely want to help people and I want to be this version of myself to where I'm healed and I'm able to hold a space for somebody if they need it and they want to go through this healing journey. And so that also leads into like the breaking the cycles, right? Like if I can learn to heal myself and be an example for our children, then maybe at some point in time, maybe not, but maybe at some point in time in their life, they will come to a point where they're like, hey, mom, like, I'm tired of living this life. This is how I feel, XYZ. Like, I need your help. Like, what did you do to heal and kind of break free? Because I am living a different path than most people in terms of healing and what I do, and it's different. And so I feel like with me getting to live this experience and going through this journey, I'm able to open myself up to people in a very vulnerable way to where I can hopefully help be a guide. So I hate the term like heal people because I'm not healing anyone, right? It's just like me sharing my story and me sharing my experiences that can lead to you being open-minded to healing, and that's where the growth comes, and that's why I liked this quote. So that's why I chose my quote. So I wanted to get into your experience with healing. So I know, like I said, back in February, you were like, her and I are on different paths in terms of healing. She's doing this for like herself and emotion. And you were like really focused on like the manifestation and the law of attraction side of things.
So I would say the one thing that maybe helped me start maybe pondering on whether I wanted to start working on myself would be when you had me close my eyes and you kind of walked me through trying to see if I could visualize little Andy or little Andres myself as a because I had no idea how to even do that. So you having me close my eyes, walking me through by telling me, like try to picture yourself as young as you can. And then and that's kind of easy, kind of hard, but then you also going into detail by telling me like, okay, like what is he wearing? How does his hair look? Is he smiling? Is he sad? Like I wouldn't have known how to do any of that stuff on my own. So when you guided me through it and I was able to see and envision how he looked like, being able to feel the emotions that I felt of how he felt within me, it really it like opened my eyes to where I was like, okay, maybe the being able to feel how he felt and seeing like, okay, and I know that I did stop you prematurely because the way he was feeling and the emotions that I felt, I wasn't ready to feel those emotions, so that's why I stopped you prematurely. And then after that day, just kind of pondering it, and then you telling me over and over, you should really try to work on yourself. And, you could help me work on trying to keep finding little Andy and trying to take care of him, to learn how to reparent him. And that's when I was like, okay, like I'll give it a try and just see where it goes. And then just from the first session from you again bringing me to close my eyes and just having to envision him, how he looked like. And then it even helped more when you gave me the idea of finding a picture of myself at the youngest age that I could. And even at that, when we looked at the first picture that came up, it wasn't even the youngest version of myself, but it was a picture of me when I was in sixth grade. Looking at that picture on my own, I wouldn't have known what I was looking at, but when you told me to just look into his eyes and to just like what could I feel? What emotions could I feel from looking at the eyes of that picture? And then just me, of course, me wanting to resist and just saying like I don't feel anything, but then you guiding me and telling me like, okay, just take time. I mean, just take your time. It's not like a rush process and just see what comes up. And then me just sitting there and waiting and ideas coming to my head. And since I'm so new to it, still wanting to resist opening up. So getting ideas of what I felt, but still keeping them inside because I'm like, okay, if I say this emotion, like now I'm gonna have to talk about it. So if I'm gonna say it, then I better be ready to talk about it. And kind of just fighting in my head, like, okay, am I gonna say it? Am I not? I'm feeling this emotion, but am I gonna say it or not? And then finally just telling you like, okay, well, he looks sad or he looks unhappy and then you asking me, well, why is he unhappy? Why is he sad? And then me just having to sit there and think because you didn't let me just say I don't know. Like I had to sit there and think and you told me I wasn't rushed and I could take all the time that I needed. And then you did actually just sit there and wait while I tried to process all the thoughts that were coming into my head. That really, from that first session of doing that, it's what started me being able to see that there is a child inside of me that's still there that I neglected for so long because I had no idea that there was an inner child in me. That's what really, from that first session, that's really what helped me believe, okay, like that there is something to this inner child healing, and I'm willing to explore it more and see how far I can get or see what I can learn about myself that maybe I've been hiding for so long. And hopefully it helps me feel better about myself or feel better about life. And so that's how the journey started.
Yeah, and I love that because it has been a journey, right? And it's like something that like I even tell you like I'll be honest with you and I'll be like I don't know how we're going to do this, but we're just going to try to get through this step by step. But definitely a level of vulnerability is required. Do you feel like in working with your inner child because what you said is true. Like I feel like as adults and unless you're like on the journey of inner child healing or trying to better yourself or frequencies or energies whatever the case is, I feel most often than not we don't realize that we have our inner child still. So there is no connection with that inner child and I speak from even myself. I had no connection. I didn't even know there was a little Val inside of me. So that is something that does take time to develop. But I do feel like you said, you do have to be vulnerable enough to sit through the ugly feelings, the feelings that come up when you were going through that traumatic event in your life. And I do push you. So I know you, like you said, y'all tell you like, okay, let's sit there. Or I'll tell you like, no, like there's a deeper feeling. You're giving me like surface level. Let's go deeper. And so
Mhm.
do you feel that when you are trying to connect now with little Andy, it's beginning to get a little bit easier? Or do you feel like it's still hard to connect to him?
Well, it all just depends on how much you put into it. So before I tried making meditation a priority, when I was like, okay, I'm gonna meditate right now, and then a day would go by, then I wouldn't meditate, then another day would go by, and then okay, then this day I'll meditate. When I was doing it like that, I was still able to envision my little Andres, and I was still able to speak the affirmations that I do to him. And now that I've made it more of a priority where I'm doing it nearly every single day, it's gotten a lot better to where before it felt like words when I would tell him, like when I would tell him that he's worthy or he's enough just because he exists. At first, they were just words. But now when I say it, I could feel that I'm actually telling him and that I'm believing it when I tell him, and in return, by me believing when I tell him that he's enough and feeling it in return, I know that he's feeling that he's enough, and that feeling that I'm feeling by telling him is the same feeling that he's feeling when I tell him. And so, of course, I skipped like a big chunk because I went right to where I am right now. But from the beginning, at first, it was just a struggle trying to envision little Andres. So just sitting there and being like, okay, like I know I did it during the session with my babe. So now now I'm sitting here and I'm having again trying to envision it. And it did help when we did find that picture of me even smaller than I already was when I was in sixth grade. Now we have found a picture where maybe I was like 6 or 7, and just envisioning how he looked in that picture as his face, and then kind of picturing the way he's dressed based on that picture and some of the other pictures that I've seen, and just kind of sticking with that style. So just okay, this is how he looks from his face. This is what he's wearing. He's wearing like pants, the shoes that he's wearing, all the way down to his shoes, because I did know that when I was a kid, we would get our shoes from Payless. So I already knew that I'd probably be wearing the shoes that have like the little straps that instead of having laces, they're just like little straps that you would get from Payless. And so all the way down to that. And the more that I practiced it, the easier that it was for me to envision him, to where before I had to pay attention, like, okay, this is what he's wearing and this is how he looks, to now where I just know how he looks without me even having to try to envision what he's wearing,
Mhm.
anything. Like I just completely see him, yeah, and now I can connect. And I'm just having like a hard time how to explain it, because my brain's telling me that, or my mind's telling me that I'm skipping so many parts to where, because I'm explaining to where I am right now, but I mean, that's just where I'm at right now, and it's gonna be hard for me to insert everything that I went through. But basically,
Yeah.
from just trying to envision little Andres, like that's what it's been, from struggling to picture him to now I picture him so easy, to the point where when I meditate, I picture him coming out of a door, and and that's just the way that works for me. I picture him coming out of a door, and then one time just meditating and just wondering like, okay, like he's coming out of a door, like what's in that room that he's coming out of. And I've only done it once, so just what's in that room that he's coming out of. And so just one day envisioning him, and after I did my affirmations, just like seeing him take my hand, and then we go to that door, and then just the door opening, it was just like a room that was just full of like bright light. Like I couldn't see anything in the room, but it was just like a room full of like bright white light. And just knowing that it was like a room where he could do whatever he wanted and it was safe and there wasn't like any kind of pain. He was just like he was just happy to be
True at
in.
his true core, in his
Yeah,
essence.
exactly. And okay, and then after that experience like that, now I know when I envision him coming out of that room, I already know what was in that room and why he's coming out of there. And for some reason, that's just what works for me and where it's led to each time that I envision him when he's coming to me, so that I can like, start embracing him and giving him those affirmations.
And just some insight for people who don't know, when we say meditation, what we do is we do a lot of inner child work. When we are doing our meditation, we do the envisioning of the little versions of us, the affirmations, and really trying to build that connection that we've lost for so many years, because it does take work. It's not something that you envision little you just in that one time and bam, you have little you. It's something that you do have to work towards and build on as you're going through your phases. And maybe it's something that you do on your own and you're not necessarily doing it during meditation. But what my husband and I do is we definitely incorporate our inner child work through our meditation sessions. So when he's talking about meditation and his inner child, that's wise. We kind of merge those two. And so what would you say to someone who is scared or thinking this is kind of like hippy dippy and why would I do an inner child healing, or why do I need to connect to little me? What would you tell that person right now?
So what I would tell that person is just that I can relate. Before you guided me that first time, just for me to close my eyes and try to envision him, before then, I didn't believe in the inner child stuff, and not that I thought it was hippy dippy, but I just didn't believe it. And after you showed me that there was a connection there, and that there was like an inner child in there that was hurting, it helped open my eyes to the possibility that there is something there. And what I would say to them is just to give it a chance, especially if you're at a point to where you feel that you're lacking something, or that you're feeling like stuck in life, or that you're always feeling like you're not happy, like you're unfulfilled, that there's just something in you that doesn't sit right, but you don't know what it is. If it's bad enough, you should just give it a try, because what do you have to lose besides just staying stuck where you're at right now, which is already the worst case scenario. So worst case scenario is you stay stuck, or you could just try it once and see where it goes. And if it doesn't go anywhere, then at least you gave it a try and maybe it wasn't for you. But for myself, when I just gave it that one try, it really opened something up that's now led to me to where I get to speak to my inner child every day and just tell him that he's enough, because I know that that's something that I needed growing up that I never heard. And at least now I can tell myself that every day and believe it and feel it. And even though I still have my inner voices that just tell me negative thoughts throughout the day. At least in those 15 minutes that I am meditating, at least during that time, I get to feel like I am enough, when before I didn't have any moment in my life where I felt like I was enough, even though and it's because I'm in the beginning stages and I'm just hoping, or not hoping, but I'm willing to keep doing it every day and just see where it goes. Because, like I said, worst case scenario is at least now, my worst case scenario is that I have 15 minutes where I get to feel enough and where I feel loved and like I love myself and I get to feel those feelings of love, and it's me who's giving them to myself. So to me, if that's worst case scenario, like I'll take that over any day of the way that it used to be.
Yeah, yeah, and I totally agree, and it's a sense of it's weird because, like, I grew up with religion. I know you grew up with religion towards, like, your teen years and then into adulthood, but, like, even with religion, you don't necessarily feel this type of, like, wholeness that you feel in connecting with little you and going through this. But it's crazy because as much as you're feeling that connection, like, everything that you have to do and, like, how you have to open yourself up is scary and can hold you back. So I feel like that's something that I was talking about in another episode with, like, I feel like there's stages. So there's stage 0, which is you hitting rock bottom. Then there's the second stage of like, okay, I'm open to this. And then there's the third stage of putting in work, which is the having to go deeper into your traumas. Like, okay, this is what really happened to me and this is how I felt at that time. So putting yourself in the vulnerable state, but as much as you're putting in that work and you're being vulnerable, there's, like, the amazingness and the great feeling that you have and I was able to connect with myself, and now I know this is how I felt XYZ, so this is how I'm going to reparent myself, and you give yourself what you needed, what you lacked. But it is scary and it is, like, extremely vulnerable, so I feel like a lot of people can stray away from inner child healing because they're afraid to be vulnerable.
I mean, maybe because I think the vulnerable aspect of it has to do with having to tell somebody else how you're feeling, because when I could hear or when I could feel all the different words that were coming to mind when I was looking at myself in my eyes, and all the negative feelings and the sadness and just being hurt and feeling alone, all of that came to my mind instantly. But it was having to tell somebody else that was the hard part, because knowing, like I said, knowing once you tell somebody else, they're not just going to hear the feelings that you've just named and then just let you like move on to something else. They're going to ask you why you're feeling those feelings. And that's when it kind of gets to where like, okay, well, now I have to open up about why I was feeling those feelings. And I
Dig
mean,
deeper.
I don't know if I was just feeling, if I was like more resistant to telling you because you're my wife, and so having to tell you about stuff that I went through when I was younger, it was like a little bit more scarier, because I was like, okay, well, this is my wife. Like I want her to find me attractive, and if I start telling her things about like how I got bullied or the names that I was called or why I was bullied, then she's gonna know that I was made fun of for that stuff, and then she won't find me as attractive, and that was scary to me. So I don't know if it would be different if I was doing it with somebody who wasn't my wife or who wasn't my partner, but I do know that for me, that was the scariest and most vulnerable part, was not feeling the feelings, but having to tell somebody else the feelings, because I knew that once I told them, they're gonna want me to. explain why I'm feeling those feelings, and that was the scary part for me.
Yeah, no, and that makes sense. Our situation is different because, like you said, I am your wife. And so when I had my journey and going into this inner child healing work, it was with Marsha, who was the person that I was working with at that time. And so I could only imagine. I mean, I'm pretty open minded in terms of like you and I have conversations about everything all the time. And so I don't know how it would be if the roles were reversed, but I totally can understand where you're coming from. And so my situation was different. And of course, the people that are listening, if they decide to dive into it, I highly doubt that their spouse will be the one that's guiding them through the inner child healing. So that would be different too. But yeah, I feel like it is something that does require, like, intense work, and it's crazy because you think, like, "Okay, if I start to do this, then I'm gonna, like, basically heal myself," right? And because 'cause I'm gonna have the keys, but it's something that I feel like once you know the keys and you start working on it, you can't stop because you know if you stop, you're gonna go right back to where you were. Would you agree with that? Like, go back to where you were, but you know that there's something better, if that makes sense.
And you mean like if you're working on it on your own, or if you just stop working it, period?
Like, if you stop working it, period. Like, let's just say all of a sudden you stop meditating, you stop doing inner child work, journaling, gratitudes, affirmations, the whole spiel, right? You just stop and you go back to living life the way you were because you're like, okay, this does require work and effort to be the best version of myself possible, to be who
Mhm.
I am at my core in my truest sense, in my essence, as to where I was when I was first born. It does require work to be this version of myself, right? It requires work in the sense of you have to put in the time and the effort, fill your own cup. It requires sense of like outside factors, right? We get tested and triggered daily. And so that also requires work. So everything becomes work in the sense of you're trying to be the best version of yourself while living a human reality, while living this existence, right? Because we're spiritual beings, I feel, living a human reality. So we're trying to figure this out and work towards it to where sometimes it can be hard and some people can just give up and go right back to it, right? But you go back to like feeling down and you're not connecting with yourself. So you lose that inner connection and you kind of go back to square one. So do you feel like, what would you tell somebody who's feeling like, okay, this is a lot of work to put in. I might as well just go back to the old version of myself.
I mean, all I could tell them is that I relate because when I first started, it did feel like a lot having to sit there and just try to envision my little Andres. It did feel like work because I was actually having to try and picture how he looked, how he was dressed, and having to set time to do that meditation. And so I understand that at the beginning it does feel like work, but if you just keep doing it, once you start feeling the difference in yourself or actually seeing some kind of result from it, it stops feeling more like work. And I mean, it starts feeling less like work, and not
Mhm.
all aspects, but at least for the meditating, from me talking to myself and telling little Andres how he's enough just because he exists, like telling him over and over and over to the point where now I could feel love from myself, like to myself. It doesn't feel like work anymore and it feels good. And now instead of it feeling like work that I have to meditate, now it's become more of a priority where I'm like, okay, like I know football's on, or I know that they're waiting for me because we're gonna go eat. But if I don't do this, like I enjoy being able to tell little Andy or little Andres how much he means to me, that I'm willing to miss as much time as I need to from football, or I'm willing to just be like, okay, like I love my family, but I want to tell myself how much I love myself because I'm actually feeling it now and I don't want to lose that anymore, and it feels good when I do it. So it doesn't feel like work anymore, and it feels more like I'm putting it before everything else on purpose now, instead of me having to put it first. Like now I'm doing it first just because how good it feels. And not all aspects, like me having to journal, that still feels like work, and it's still, so that's how come I'm saying I could relate, because that aspect still feels like work, having to put time aside to journal my thoughts, and then having to put time aside to answer myself with my left hand, which takes even longer just to do a little paragraph. It does feel like work, so that's something that I still have to be like, okay, like I have to sit down and do it because I won't be able to put my thoughts on paper and then be able to read it to you and then you be able to see stuff that I don't see from my own writings. And so and since it does feel like work, I'll still miss a day or two or three sometimes because it's something that I have to force myself still to do. So that's how come I can relate to the it feels like work aspect. But maybe for some people, journaling, that maybe that'll be more of their thing, and maybe meditating won't be as much, or vice versa, or maybe they'll love both of them so much that both won't feel like work, but at least from where I'm at right now, that's how my experience has been.
Okay. And so what are you excited for in this journey of healing and going back to finding that connection with the smaller, younger version of you?
What I'm excited for is to keep having the opportunities to be able to tell myself how I'm enough and how I'm worthy because I've only been doing it a couple of months, and even though I'm not where I wanted to be at least I can see like, okay, like now when I tell myself I can feel it and it feels good to feel that love for myself and then being able to feel like enough, not in all situations, but I do feel like enough in more situations or a little bit more moments throughout the day than I ever did before I started doing this. So I know that if I just keep doing it every single day, it's gonna keep sinking in more and more and to the point to where maybe I'll feel enough all day, or maybe I'll feel enough even around people that I feel intimidated by. Maybe, maybe not, but I'm willing to keep doing it every day and to just see where it goes because it just having those moments of difference, of feeling different than before where I just felt the same every single day, all day, every single day. I'd rather take where I am right now than going back to where I was.
Awesome. Last question.
Mhm.
You ready for this one? This one's a banger. Okay. So if somebody were to come up to you and ask you what's the first step in healing, inner child healing, what would your answer be?
The first step I would say is there's no possible way you can do it on your own because even if you try to do it on your own or you look at videos of how to do it or what to do, you can do that, but you won't have somebody that's looking at you from the outside and is able to see those blind spots that you're missing or that's there to push you when you don't feel comfortable. Because if you're doing something that doesn't feel good, you're going to stop to where your limit is. But if you have somebody that's there and that's coaching you, they'll help you be able to get past that limit and still by being able to guide you and you won't feel overwhelmed because they know how to guide you and what to do. And then if you do feel overwhelmed, they're there to still help you and to remind you that it's a safe space and you have somebody that's there with you, walking with you, so it doesn't even feel as overwhelming that if you were doing it on your own and just trying to blindly find the way because you have somebody that's walked the path and now they're helping you walk the path and they're walking it with you. So that would be the first thing is to find somebody that's walked that journey because you won't be able to do it on yourself. You can try, but you won't get the same result as if you were doing it with somebody else.
I agree 100%. I agree totally. Well, I just want to thank you for coming on again. I know that this isn't your thing, so I appreciate you. And I love you. And I've been blessed to be able to be your partner in this journey, not only of just life, but of this journey of healing. And I bring you up probably on like every episode. And I always tell people that you and I have some pretty deep level conversations in the sense of like just yesterday, we were talking about children and how their truest sense and their essence and how we change and how we think that the person that we are today is that's just who I am and this is who I was meant to be and this is the cards that I was dealt, but that's not the case. Like we can change our futures, we're co-creators. We are not who we truly are in terms of our essence as an inner child and who we were created to be because we go through traumas and all these issues, and so we have to get back to that essence and finding who we are as little versions of us. And so I feel like you and I have pretty good conversation in terms of like our thoughts, our beliefs, and where we're at. And I'm blessed that God has made you or created you, I should say, just for me to be this partner in life because I don't think I can have conversations with anybody else on the level that I do with you in terms of my thoughts, my beliefs, and I feel like I'm entitled to have them without judgment. And so thank you for that. And do you have anything you want to say before we wrap up the episode? Or are you good?
I would say the only other thing that I would want to mention is what I was saying at the beginning of the podcast, how when you're born and like the way that I mentioned that I tell myself that I'm enough just because I exist. Well, when we're born or when I was born, I was enough just by existing. Like the way that I said, like being a baby, you don't have any experience in life yet. You have nothing to offer, but you're still enough. And I just want to let people know that, or not let people know, but how I was enough and how going through life and all the experiences that where people rejected me, where I was made fun of, where I went through traumatic experiences, and that inner child in me had to adapt to those circumstances to survive and to survive another day and to just keep going, and how all those different situations, all those rejections and all those traumas just kept stacking onto me, and now all of a sudden I don't feel worthy enough. I don't express myself anymore like when I was a kid or when I was a baby and I wanted to yell or I wanted to scream because I'm hungry. I just screamed. And now as an adult, if I ever, just seeing somebody with like cool shoes, and in my head I instantly think like, oh man, those are cool shoes, like I want to let them know. And then just having that voice in me say like, no, like you're not, don't say anything, because what if they don't accept that compliment? Or what if they look at you dumb? Like what if they don't like it? What if, just all these what ifs, and you weren't born like that. It was from all the things that you've been through that's made you who you are right now, but it's not who you are because you have so much stuff that's piled on you from your life that it's changed everything about you to adapt to where you're at right now, but it's not who you are. And who you are is when you were that baby who would scream if they were hungry and didn't question, how do I sound? Am I too loud? Am I gonna sound embarrassing? They just screamed because they were hungry. And so that's where I believe that or at least I believe that's where I want to get to, the point where if I want to say something to somebody, I don't question myself. Is it going to be embarrassing? Am I going to sound clever or smart or not? That's where I want to get to, and I just want people to know that they are who they were when they were just a baby and didn't have anything to offer and were still enough. So that's all I have to say, I guess.
Yeah, that's who they can become again.
Oh yeah, exactly. Yes.
Yeah, their trauma doesn't define them. And I feel like that's super important is I feel like you can be a victim to it or you can like use all of those traumas and reparent yourself. And I was a victim for many years until I became enlightened and found this healing journey. And so I feel like now I realize like my traumas didn't define me. What I went through wasn't who I am at my core and my essence. It's who I became, but that's not who I am. So
Exactly.
thank you for sharing. That's really good.
You're welcome.
Okay. All right. So I do offer coaching. Just wanted to remind you guys on inner child healing. If you need a reference, he is on the screen to the side of me. And I'm happy to hold a place for you in my heart if you are ever wanting to begin this journey or have any questions or just want to talk or chat. Feel free to reach out to me. You can reach me at healingmamapodcast@gmail.com. You can DM me, whatever is easier for you. But I appreciate you guys for taking the time to tune in. And I send you so much love, peace, joy, happiness. Please don't forget to like, share, subscribe, follow. We are on YouTube, Podcastle, Riverside, Instagram, TikTok, Apple Podcasts. And then if there's any that I am missing that you know of that you would like for me to post, go ahead and message me and I will be happy to do that. Until next time, I send you love. I hope you have a great weekend. Any last words?
Healing Papa out.
Bye, guys.
Bye.